All right, fantastic. What's with the weather here? It's exactly like this in Cleveland. This is terrible. I was hoping for something balmy. First of all, anybody in your households have a disclaimer rule like we do in my family? I'll tell you a little bit about the disclaimer rule. So when my mom giving gifts for birthdays or Christmas or whatever the case was, before she would hand the gift, she'd always say, before I give this to you, I have to tell you something about it. And there'd always be something like I would want to take it back, or there might be something wrong, or I might not like it. So my disclaimer to you today is I'm fighting a little bit of a cold here. I'm going to do the best I can to get through it. I might step over and grab some water, but I'm going to do my best to perform for you and get through a nice session on content marketing. Just so I'm clear, how many of you have heard of the term content marketing before today? Raise your hand, nice and high so I can see. Okay, so you all have. I've been using that term since 2001 when people were calling me crazy. And lucky enough, now you're all using it, so it's wonderful for our business model. I'm at Junta Joe. If anybody on Twitter? I don't know if we've got a big tweeting audience. I'm at Junta Joe if you're tweeting along. Like the introduction, I've written a couple books. There they are. This is actually me in my custom orange suit. I usually bring out more orange, but since this wasn't my event, I went a little bit more subdued on the orange. But this is at our big event, Content Marketing World. And I'll announce this at the end, but Content Marketing World this year in September in Cleveland, Ohio, we're adding on a day specifically for manufacturing, content marketing just for the manufacturing industry. I started in publishing from 2000 to 2007 at Penton Media. What happened was when our sales reps for any of the publications, when they were out selling and they couldn't sell a print ad, then they would let us go call on the customers. That's basically how we did. We went and sold e-newsletters, custom magazines, webinars, anything that wasn't a print ad. I left in 2007 and started what is now CMI. So you'll hear a little bit about CMI throughout and what we're trying to do. I like to start off content marketing by talking about history. I'm a pretty big history buff. Anybody see Lincoln, by the way? Fantastic movie. I've seen it like 3 or 4 times already. I like to talk about content marketing from a historic standpoint because we often think that content marketing is new. And I want to share, first of all, that content marketing is not new. I like to start with the example of John Deere. Anybody heard of a small little company called John Deere? John Deere actually developed the Furrow magazine back in 1895. This is the Furrow from 1931, and that's the picture of the Furrow magazine today. It goes out to 1.5 million farmers across the world. It is the largest subscribed farming magazine in the world. So you've learned one thing today, and that one thing is who creates the largest magazine in the world for farmers? It's not a media company. It's actually John Deere, 14 languages and 40 countries. I like to show that because what we're talking about is you creating your own content to attract and retain customers has been going on for a long time. It's just a lot of the rules have changed and enabled us to create content more effectively. So I want to talk about content marketing, and actually somebody just asked about what is content. Content is different than content marketing, and I want you all to have an understanding of the way that we view content marketing so that you can learn how to use that more effectively in your business. Here's the only formal definition slide you'll get. We're talking about owned media and not renting the media. And Alicia's going to talk about how we need to use an integrated media concept and philosophy. I hope you are. Hopefully, okay. So you're going to talk a lot about this. I'm not a traditional advertising hater. I'm not talking about that at all. But what we're seeing is a correction. And from so many years on, when John Deere was creating their publications in 1800 all the way to now, what we saw was an overemphasis of paid media. And now we're really coming back to reality, and we're seeing a correction. We're seeing that paid, earned, and owned even out even more. But we lost the skills of owned media over that time. So what we're talking about is your owned media channels. What are we trying to do with those? We're trying to attract and retain customers, right? We're not just doing it because we want to be nice. We're doing it because this is business here. What are we doing? We were creating and curating valuable, compelling, and consistent content, and this is the most important thing. And this is the difference between content and content marketing. If it's not enhancing or changing a behavior, it's just content. Most of us create lots of content, but is it content marketing for us? Is it actually moving the business? That's what we want to know. That's what we're trying to get to. So this idea of owned media, content marketing, it's really on the upswing. I like to talk about it in respect to looking at yourself as a media company. What is the difference between what a company like a CFE Media creates and all the brands that they have versus what you create? And a lot of people think it's a lot different. It's like, oh, we're much different than media company. The content we create is much different. Actually, not so much. So if you look at, so let's say this is you over here, you're on the brand side, and then let's just take your publishers, media companies on the other side. There's actually only one difference in how content is created, in the business model of content creation. Does anybody want to take a quick guess at what that is? That one thing? If you're wrong, I won't make fun of you or anything, I promise. No guessing? I'm sorry, say that again? External sponsors. You know what? That is pretty darn close. You're getting half of it, so I'm going to go on with that one. Thank you very much. It's how the money comes in. Let's go into this because it's very, very important on what we're seeing on the changing landscape of what a marketing department looks like. So if you are a publisher, if you're a media company, 99% of your business model is made through I'm either going to have that content be sponsored, I'm going to get somebody to buy an ad next to that in a magazine or a newspaper or a 30-second spot on the television, or somebody's going to pay for that content. Paid content model, subscription, I'm going to get a subscription to Inc. magazine or whatever the case is. That's 99% of how publishers make their money. How do you make your money? By selling more products and services in some way, right? The process and how that is done is identical. What I've been able to see from starting in publishing in 2000 to now being able to go into some of we work with mostly Fortune 1000 companies like Petco, Allstate, AT&T. Those are all our customers. And what's amazing to me is their departments are publishing departments. Their marketing departments are becoming publishing departments. So the reason why I show you this is you're going to see a lot of content marketing and you're doing a lot of content marketing, but a lot of us aren't taking it seriously enough. And I think we've really got to come to the point now where you're competing and going against everything, with Google, with your partners, with your real competitors. You're competing, look at Facebook. You're competing with family and friends. Everybody who's on Facebook here? Are we all on Facebook? Do you ever look at your stream and you see kind of what's in your stream? Your friends and your family and your spouse is talking about something, and if you got kids old enough, you see your kids on there. It's like, they don't have to take an ad out to get your attention, right? They're in your stream. But the opposite is true for us. We're competing with them for that attention. We're competing with that just like everything else. So it's tough to get through this. So if you're looking at, of course, we just learned a lot about SEO. If you want to get found in Google today, if you want to drive any sort of online leads today, and you want to figure out how do you work social media for your organization, you have to be telling compelling stories. And not just content, not just filler content. These have to be really compelling stories, information that's going to solve the pain points of your customers because they can completely ignore you today. I've seen a number of stats. Forrester was the one that I just saw, where 65% of the buying process is already through by the time your salesperson gets involved. So if you're not in the mix on that 65% from a content perspective, you're probably not even getting your salesperson involved at that point. We've got to create better content or we're going to miss out on that opportunity. So I'm going to talk to you about a couple of examples. These are two, I know we're a B2B crew. I'm going to talk to you about a couple consumer examples, and I'll bring it home, I promise, and talk about B2B at the end. But I want to show you a couple of examples. I think it's really important for the industry. I don't know if you know this very happy gentleman. This is Mr. Jonathan Mildenhall. He is the Chief Creative Strategist for Coca-Cola. Anybody ever see the movie Jerry Maguire? You know that movie Jerry Maguire? So Jerry Maguire, if you remember the beginning of that movie, Jerry Maguire wakes up in a sweat and has this epiphany that in order to fix the agency, the agency has to have less clients and not more personal attention. Remember what he typed up the blue memo and ran to Kinko's or whatever it was, printed it off and submitted it and gave it to all the employees, and then, what was it, like a couple days later, or maybe later that day, got fired? Well, Jonathan had a Jerry Maguire situation, except he didn't get fired, he got promoted by doing the same type of thing. And his Jerry Maguire mission statement is this. It's Coca-Cola Content 2020. Who's seen Content 2020? Tom, you've seen it? Okay, 5 of you. All right, so you have a homework assignment. This is 17 minutes of your life. I promise it'll be worth it. There's 2 videos, one's 7 minutes, one's 10 minutes. And what Jonathan goes through, it's actually quite an interesting couple videos that they put on. It's on YouTube, so just type it into Google, you'll find it. And this is a really good slide that shows you what it's all about. What Jonathan is saying is that Coca-Cola has done, and of course it's been an amazing brand for so many years, but he said, look, we cannot market the way that we've marketed over the past 100 years. We have to switch from being excellent at creative to being excellent at content. And he's basically saying their BHAG, their 2020 BHAG is to basically double the amount of sugary drink that they sell by 2020. That's kind of their goal and what they're getting to. And they said the only way they're going to get there is by telling amazing stories that create emotional attachments with their customers. So what they're doing now is they're starting to enact this strategy. So this is a strategy, and they created this back in 07, 08. And now you're starting to see the fruits of that and them really focusing on storytelling. I'll give you one example. There's a lot of examples. I could talk about Coke the whole time. This was launched a couple months ago. It's covered in the Journal and the Times. Coca-Cola Journey. And with Coca-Cola Journey, they have 4 full-time and 40 freelance writers to this, creating all kinds of content, video, textual content, infographic content that they feel is going to create an emotional connection with Coke drinkers. So they do sustainability, they do business, they do all kinds of things. Some of it's about Coca-Cola, but most of it's not about Coca-Cola. It's about things that they feel would resonate. The reason why I want to show you this is because when, Coke has, I think, a $4 billion marketing budget of some kind. It's a little one. So they're doing the best they can with that $4 billion. Oh, I moved on there. But they are spending millions on this now. So very small for them. But I could see this is going to shift very, very rapidly. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Coca-Cola. So, moving on, somebody says, Joe, who does it the best? Who's the best in the world at content marketing? And for whatever reason about sugary drinks, I always have to use Red Bull. And I'll just give you a couple of examples of Red Bull, and then I'll talk about some research, but I think it's really important. Red Bull Media House, I would put up to any media company in the world as to the processes and the journalistic talent that they have associated with Red Bull. And I say this all the time, and I just decided to throw it up here. What's different about Red Bull is that they really believe they're a media company first. And they will absolutely say that. And what you'll see coming out of Red Bull, and you're starting to see it a little bit, you'll start to see so many new products come out because they're not focused on just creating soft drinks or energy drinks. They will start to focus on their enthusiast audience and create products and services focusing on them. So it really widens what they can offer from a product standpoint. A couple things and what they do and some of their properties. Red Bull Content Pool. Anybody see the space jump guy? Amazing that they were able to pull that off. So they own, who owns all that content? Red Bull owns all that content. Well, when media companies want to license that content, they actually go to Red Bull to pay Red Bull for that content. So they're not only getting the exposure of Red Bull, they're getting paid because of the content. So they have 50,000 photos, 5,000 videos that basically traditional publishers pay them to get access to. So this is actually a profit center for Red Bull. They have a record label. They fund independent artists all over the world that really target their core demographics. They have a record label. Their magazine, Red Bulletin, in digital and print, goes to 4.8 million people across the world. And they have all kinds of other brands. I'm just showing you. They got television stations, radio stations, on and on and on. So I'm just showing you this because most people don't realize that, wow, they really are a media company, and they've been putting processes behind this for a long time. So this is the future, and we're seeing it right now in what Red Bull is doing. All right. So a couple pieces of research. So I've got, and you saw a couple of them in the last presentation. Content Marketing Institute and Marketing Pros, we've been doing B2B research specific to content marketing for the last couple of years. So I'm going to show you a little bit of this. Basically, what we found is that 91% of all B2B marketers use content marketing in one way or another. It doesn't mean that they're doing it right. It means that they're doing it. Actually, let me ask you this, and if you don't feel like answering it, it's okay, but I really am curious to know. How many of you have a documented, written content marketing strategy as part of your marketing strategies? Documented, written content strategy. I know we already talked about it. You have one. Is there anyone else that wants to raise their hand? Documented, written strategy. So this is why we'll get into this important part of the presentation, because, and we see this with the research, that we have a lot of this going on, but we haven't taken our skill sets to the next basis. So, okay, yeah, we are all publishers today. We're all doing it. The average budget is 33% up from 26%. Large companies spend less as a percentage. Small companies spend more. Large companies still do a lot of paid media programs, field marketing, product marketing programs. I'll zoom in on this for a second, but I'm only showing this so you can see here's all the things that we're doing. Steve talked about these. But just to zoom in on some of these, yes, we're all using content for social media. 78% of you have your own e-newsletters. 77% have blogs. What I love about that one is if you look against IBM research, it says that 85% of corporate blogs have 5 or less posts. Did that all sink in? It doesn't sound like it did. This is how we are, especially as B2B marketers. We're really good at starting things. We're not really good at consistently driving them, and that's the one thing about the definition that we often forget. Content marketing is about consistency. It goes outside of the campaign for the most part. So even though we can do it, we've got to consistently do that. So videos, in-person events, white papers, and this research is all completely free. If you want to just go to contentmarketinginstitute.com, click on research. You can download it. It's completely ungated. You can have at it. 54% are increasing budgets over the next 12 months. And here's the big stat, right? So I always say, what's the definition of insanity? 91% are using content marketing. 54% are increasing their budget over the next 12 months in content marketing. And yet just 36% believe that they're effective, which makes perfect sense. I mean, nobody said 10 years ago that, oh, you were all trained as marketers, but really you should have been trained as publishers. It's really what we need to be. We actually need both today. So this is a problem that we're seeing, and this is a bigger problem. So when you ask what is the biggest challenge, get everywhere I go. Big billion-dollar company, small company, I always say, I need more content. Joe, I got to have some more content. So the two big challenges are producing enough content and then producing the kind of content that engages. So when this came out this year, I was a little bit sad because it used to be just, this was always the number one. Because it is difficult to create engaging content. That's what publishing is. Journalism is not easy to do. But then all of a sudden we've got this one being, oh, we need more content. We've got all these buckets to fill. We need more and more of it. And I really think that that's because we're focusing on the wrong things. And I'm just going to be a testament to, we have one person here that has a written, documented strategy. I'm going to put you on the spot. Yeah, it was just you. Well, there might have been one or two, but after you rose your hand, they took it down. Like, no, I don't want to be associated with her. How do you know? You don't know. If you don't have a documented strategy, then you've built a hypothesis off of what works and what doesn't from a content standpoint. We don't know whether we need more. So it's a problem that we have right now. So I call this the problem with what? You get it all the time. So they'll say, well, if a marketer comes to us and say, Joe, I want to do what American Express does in American Express Open Forum. Anybody been to American Express Open Forum? Seen this site? Fantastic content marketing site. Basically, they drive original and syndicated pieces of content through this site, targeting small business owners. They drive, and they won't say more, but they say as many new credit card inquiries from this site than anything else that they do. And by the way, they fund this a lot. You'll be happy with this. They fund this a lot through advertising. They drive a lot of people to this site through ads. But they say, Joe, I want to do this site. I'm like, okay, you want to do that site? They say, no, we love what DuPont does with their Twitter content strategy. We want to do that. Or they'll say, Joe, we want to have a Pinterest strategy. What's our Pinterest strategy? By the way, this is my Pinterest board dedicated to the color orange. It has no business purpose at all. I'm just showing you how we get fixated on these social buckets. So I don't want you to focus so much on the channel. We need to focus on something else. So we're focusing on the what, you need to focus on the why. So what I want you to come away with, and I'm going to show you a bunch of examples here and give you some takeaways and things to do. But this is the number one thing. So if I could leave with anything, I want you to say, wow, what Joe taught me is that I really need to understand why I'm creating my content in the first place. Why am I on Facebook? Just a little side note, because I talked to a CMO the other day of one of the largest gas stations in the Midwest, and if I said it anymore, you'd know who it is. And she said, Joe, we've got 40,000 Facebook fans. We did a really good job. We were really promoting it and got up to that point. How can we use content to generate more fans on Facebook? I said, that's a good question. I said, tell me this. Why are you on Facebook? And she didn't know. So my question to you is, as you're going through and looking at how you're going to use content in your marketing, you need to look at every one of your channels and understand why you're using that channel in the first place. Why are you on Twitter? Why? Because then you'll figure out what your channel strategy is and what kind of content you need to fill that channel. So I want you to start asking why a lot. So I'm going to talk about this thing called this content marketing mission statement, which is the first step for your content strategy. And you all need one before you move further into a formalized structure. So I believe that is the middle of everything that we want to get done. Because this is ultimately what I want you to do. I want you to start thinking and acting like a publisher. I want you to start thinking and acting like the good folks here at CFE and what they do. Because if you want to basically solve your content, your marketing objectives, that's how we're going to have to start. We're going to have to really focus on the pain points of the reader first. And really think about, we'll talk about subscription in a second, the importance of subscription. All right, a couple of examples of a content marketing mission statement. I don't know if anybody's been to this site. This is homemadesimple.com. Homemadesimple.com is a Procter & Gamble site. I don't know if you thought about it. Like usually when you see that, you're like, oh, is that a Meredith or is that a Real Simple site? This is done by P&G. It was created in 2000, so they've been doing this for 13 years. You want to know how many? Do you know how many people they have signed up for the site? They have over 10 million people signed up to receive daily updates for recipes from Procter & Gamble. How would you like that? 10 million people raising their hands and say, yes, I would like to receive your marketing every day. That's exactly what this is, because that marketing is so good. So what is their content marketing mission statement? So I'll give you a couple of examples of these, and then we'll go to a B2B example so you can get the drift of what I'm going for. Here's their goal. It's all about the reader, enabling women to have more quality time with their families. Now, why is this important? Because if maybe somebody has a really good story idea about how guys can use a chicken recipe more effectively. And I would say, no, we can't use that because we're not targeting guys. If it's about guys but for women, then that would fit in our storytelling strategy. But because what will happen, I've seen it happen so many times, somebody in the organization gets a really good idea about a story, but it probably may or may not fit our mission statement. So we've got to make sure that we go into this first and focus on this is our litmus test for what we're going to create, the types of stories we're going to tell. All right. So here's a second site, beinggirl.com. I've got to be honest with you, I don't spend a lot of time on this site. Actually, I have two boys. 9 and 11, and there's parts of this site that literally scare me, and I wouldn't even click on a couple things. So, beinggirl.com is also a Procter & Gamble site, and they also have a mission statement, and their mission statement is this: enabling teen girls to be more confident with their bodies. That is their editorial strategy for this. It's like, okay, well, give me another one. Now this one I'm a little bit more comfortable on. This is manofthehouse.com, also a Procter & Gamble site. So if I'm going through the content, I'm like, 5 weird facts about your wife's brain. I clicked right on that. I read it, forwarded it on. It's fantastic. So they have anybody want to guess the mission statement for this one? Here it is. I know, ladies, you're waiting for it. Here it is. Now, here's an example of setting an unrealistic mission statement. They actually closed this site. And I show it because I really believe this is an unrealistic mission statement. You can't, right, ladies? It can't be done. You can't, I know full well you can't do this. But just to give you an idea, rolling through. So here's how P&G does it. Let me give you a B2B example. Anybody ever been to the Indian blogs? Great B2B example. Indian Corporation, they sell industrial solders. So they have 17 blogs where engineers are blogging on an almost daily basis. And here's their mission statement. Help engineers answer the most challenging industrial solder questions. That tells me a couple things. The authors are engineers. The second thing is, if it's not about industrial solders, I'm not talking about it, right? If it's about something else, that's not what we do. So we really need this to focus, because if we really want to be the thought leader, the expert in our industry, we've got to focus on what our core niche is. Oh, by the way, Rick Short, who ran this program, saw a 600% jump in leads from running this within a year. Amazing program that India put together for this. All right. So I want to work one through so you know how to do it. So then I'm going to use Inc. So Inc. is, that's a piece of content that I love. I get giddy when that magazine comes in the mail. So I'm like, okay, what does Inc. do? Now Inc. puts theirs right on their site. So welcome to Inc.com, a place where entrepreneurs and business owners can find useful information, advice, insights, resources, and inspiration for running and growing their businesses. Beautiful. So if you're going to do your blog or your content platform site, wherever your home for content is, you should have your mission statement. Say it proudly what it is. It'll not only work from an internal content standpoint, but for your customers as well. Here's the different core things that you need to focus on. Who's your target audience? By the way, I showed P&G because a lot of you big companies in the room, you have multiple content strategies. You can't just have one of these. You have, just like you have different magazines, CFE has different magazines for different targets over different niches. You need to start with one, but this is why this is going to be so hard and get really funky over the next few years, because some of you will have 10, 12 different content strategies, and that's when you'll start to freak out. But don't get there yet. Bring it back home and focus on one that we can do really well. Who's that core target audience? Entrepreneurs and business owners. What's going to be delivered? Useful information, advice, insights, resources. What's the outcome for the audience? Growing a profitable business. You need to think about that, because most of our content, which 99% of the content you have right now, is product-specific content. We need to switch that. I want 90% of your content not to be about you. 90% has to be about them. Because what we've done is we've created all this content and we've shoved it in this very small part of the buying cycle. That's when they want to know about you and about all your products and features. But almost everything else, and then I'll show you the funnel that we use. Almost everything else is not going to be about you. So how do you get involved in that conversation? You have to talk about those things. All right? All right. Any questions about that? All right. So I've got, I think, 4 other examples that I'm going to show you here, just to go through what some other companies are doing. Everybody remember Kelly Services? Old Kelly Girl. Kelly Girl grew up, became Kelly Girl. I'm going to sell you a $2 billion outsourcing program, and that's what they're doing right now. So this is 12 to 24-month sales cycle that they put together to sell big industrial programs to Fortune 500 companies to outsource their workforce stuff. Now, Todd Wheatland is the VP of Thought Leadership there, And Todd uses this program, and he gave us the permission to show this. So actually for a big billion-dollar company, they have a very small staff. They only have 3 people in their content marketing group. And what he said was, Joe, I'm not going to do 10 blog posts a day. That's just not how we're built. But when we come up with a story idea, and I know, Alicia, you're going to talk a little bit about something like this. So when we do a story idea, I want to create and plan for 20 unique pieces of content from that one story idea. What most of us do is we create a white paper or an ebook or a webinar, and then it'll go well, and then we'll say, how do we repurpose the heck out of that crap? And how do we get it spread out all over everywhere? We figure it out afterwards. What we want to do is we want to plan for it before. So I want you to, when you do your editorial calendar, you have your story idea, and then you're going to have your channel strategy about all the ways you're going to use that content. So let me give you an example of how they use it. So normally, this is an ebook on talent mobility. Most of the time, that would be it. You send out a PDF, you might gate it as a lead generation device, whatever the case is. What Todd does is he says, no, we're going to create this. Then we have SlideShare version, Pinterest version. Then we have different white papers based on our different buyer personas, because we have multiple buyer personas. I don't want to just have to start from scratch each time. I'm going to create something up front. So I got one that goes to the CFO, I got one that goes to the CEO, I got one that goes to the director of HR. I'm going to start doing those versions now, and I've got different ebook versions here and here where I'm breaking apart the big one into smaller versions, and on and on. And by the way, what I really love about a design standpoint, he goes and contracts with one really good, amazing designer, pays some good money to that designer, but then gets the rights to use it throughout. So instead of getting stock photography for each one of these, this is done one time and then uses it for all 20. And seen amazing success with this. So when he comes up with a story idea, and then they'll look at all their channels, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. They use LinkedIn heavily. All right. Talk a little bit about managing the process. So a lot of you are probably doing this yourself. Some of you have some people that you're working with. What we've noticed in working with our clients is here's basically the setup for functions. These are not titles. These are functions. So like we have a magazine called Chief Content Officer. I don't expect everyone to go out and hire a Chief Content Officer. Although Petco just did. Petco just hired somebody and called him a Chief Content Officer. So I have to send a thank you note to them. Chief Content Officer is your chief storyteller. So that could be you. Who's the person that's going to own the story? That content marketing mission statement, somebody has to own that. So that's Chief Content Officer. Then you have the managing editor, which is half storyteller, half project manager. The most important person in the marketing department, in my opinion, right now, is this role right here, managing editor. Makes it all happen. Then you have content producers. Those are the people that make the content look sexy in print or on digital, whatever the case is. Then you have a chief listening officer. Your chief listening officer, hopefully our content will go out and it will get a reaction. If it doesn't, we've got more problems than this. So your chief listening officer is going to do a couple things. One, in social media or whatever the channel is, if you're getting a reaction and that's coming back to you, then that chief listening officer say, oh no, that has to go to sales or product development or customer service or whatever the case is, or it needs to go back to the chief content officer and say, look, we have to adjust our plan. So this person has 2 different roles that they have to fill. A lot of you might have a social media manager that does this, but what I'm not seeing is that the social media manager doesn't get that information back to the content person. We need to create that loop right now so that you can change and alter feedback, just like you'd be looking at analytics and changing based on what you find in analytics. Then you have content creators. That could be all of these people. It could be none of these people. It could be your customers. It could be influencers. It could be your employees. So this is basically what we're looking at. This is basically how you set up a publishing department. Now, here's the big challenge. And I'll end with an example of what SaaS does. Content is the most political thing in the organization that I've seen. Of course, I deal with it every day, so it's very, everyone feels they own it. Social media feels they own it. PR certainly feels that they own it. Marketing feels they own it. You got email, mobile, and search. Everyone feels that they own it. Just a little side story because I think it's funny. I did an email marketing conference about 9 months ago, and I talked with, this is one of the largest travel companies in the world, and I wanted to know how this person who ran email, and they sent out millions of emails a day, educational, some product promotion, and I asked her, I'm like, how do you work with social media? How do you, because you're both creating content, do you meet on a regular basis? Do you collaborate with your content? Like, how do you do it? Because I didn't know. I mean, that's a lot that they're doing. And she said, I haven't met the person in social media yet, but it's on my list. I'm serious. And that is the rule, not the exception. So what's happening is you're creating content all the way throughout the organization and nobody's talking to each other. I don't have a good way of how to fix this yet except for what SAS has done. So SAS is the largest private technology company. When I talked to the folks over there about how they did it, what they basically did is every one of these groups had a content owner. And every Monday, they all met either in person or over the phone for an hour and talked about what they were doing from a content standpoint and how they could work with each other. So I actually had to have human beings talk to each other to figure out what was going on. What they realized is that they were duplicating so much content in the organization. They were working on the same stuff just with a little bit different take, and now they were able to work with each other a little bit more and do some amazing things. All right, so I would use some kind of collaboration between those leaders from a content standpoint. All right. Leveraging employees. How many have employees that are creating content right now? Okay. Does it scare you? I talked to a CEO the other day. Says they ban all the social media. He says, I'm not letting my employees generate any kind of content. We don't even want to let our customers see them. Like I said, you might have a training problem, not a content problem there. Talk about one example of how this was done really well. This is one of my favorite examples, OpenView Venture Partners out of Boston. They're a venture capital company. And I talked to Scott Maxwell, this is back in 2009. Scott calls me up. Here we go. So Scott calls me up and says, Joe, we're doing things the way everyone else in our industry is doing them. I want to create content. I want to be thought of as the thought leader in an industry. I think we can generate leads better, but I don't really know how to do it. And so we went and worked with Scott. And what we realized when we did a content audit, because we really had to figure out, like, what are we doing now? And where's the content at? Where's the expertise at in the organization? What are the pain points of our customers? We had to do all that first to figure it out. What we realized is that all the expertise in his organization was in employees. Because what would happen is, if there was a customer or a prospect, I'm like in your way? No, do you want me to stand over here a little bit? I'm sorry. You keep moving back and forth, I just saw that. When somebody had a problem and they were going to OpenView, they'd call up and say, hey, I need to meet with so-and-so or need to meet with some expert in operations, and that individual would come in, meet with the other individual at OpenView. They would have some kind of either a phone call or in person or email back and forth. Their problem would get solved, really good quality information, and then that would be it. It would go away. And what we realized by looking at all this, like, oh my gosh, we have this amazing treasure trove of content, and we're only using it at one time, and we're never leveraging that again. So what we realized was that all these people, if we could come up with a process, they had all that expertise already. They were already answering all our customers' questions, but we needed to get that out and promote that. So what we did was we reached out and said, how many of you people would actually like to blog? So this is all self-selected. We started with about 10 that really wanted to start, really wanted to blog. And this is what they did that was genius that a lot of other companies didn't do. Most other companies I've seen do this, they say, no, here's the process. Here's when we want the content. Here's the date. We have to have it in the CMS this way, or you have to have it just in the Word document just this way. And the way that Scott did it said, look, I don't care how you get us the content. Tell us what's easiest to you. So they assigned a managing editor. They called it a content marketing director. And they basically went to the individuals and said, they either did video Q&A. They did Q&A back and forth in emails. They did get me whatever content you can get me, and we'll take it and we'll start editing it. Because it wasn't their responsibility to tell the final story. It was their responsibility to get the raw content. That's what they needed. And then they had a managing editor on staff and a proofreader besides that that would help shape that story into shape and really get that moving. So that's what they did. They launched this OpenView blog. By the way, they did it with hardly any money at all. Basically just the position's time, the internal time to do that. Launched it into this, OpenView Labs. This is their content platform, like Homemade Simple and Being Girl. This is their site, which is, I would put up against one of the best resources that they target basically technology entrepreneurs looking to get funding, take the next step in their business. This is one of the best ones in the business. I'd put it up against anything. They have over 1,000 pieces of content on this site, and the results of this, web traffic, amazing web traffic, but I'm not much for that. They had over a 2-year period. They now have over 16,000 people signed up as subscribers that have clicked and said, yes, I would like to get regular updates. That has now become their pipeline for new business. They basically don't have to go out and find companies anymore like they used to. They didn't have to go to trade show. They don't have to use their referral networks. They still do, but they don't have to because all that comes through their pipeline now naturally. And what happens is those technology entrepreneurs want to do business with OpenView, they just call them up and say, hey, we're ready now. Because they've been getting that content for 6 months, 9 months, a year. Their sales cycle went from 12 to 18 months to 3 to 6 months. Any B2B companies, would you like your sales cycle to go from 12 to 18 months to 3 to 6 months? That's what they did, and the only thing they changed was their content. That's it. Just to see, you can see this is a very, very easy content marketing funnel to look at. Any company can do this, big, small, whatever. So if you just look at the top and they're trying to draw in visitors at the top of the funnel, they've got the blog, the content platform. Once they get them in from a lead standpoint, then they have different ebooks that they target specific to them in their marketing automation program. They nurture them through their email newsletter program. Once they become customers, they do different programs from a content standpoint, targeting more ebooks, more workshops, and then every quarter they get together in person with their customer base, and they do a different topic like marketing or finance or whatever. So this is as simple as it gets, and anyone can do that. So if you're just thinking about one core target, this is a good way to do it. All right, this is my last example. And this is a lot about the third-party content that we've been talking a little bit about. I'll go here. So I'm going to talk about how we've built our program, Content Marketing Institute. The reason why I like to show this example is, first of all, I have all the results, so I can share with you everything. And if you can take some of these and steal some of these ideas, I hope that you do. The other thing is that so we were blessed. We were named to the Inc. 500 this year. We probably will be again next year. And we have spent only $40,000 over the whole 5-year time. This year is the first time we're actually now going to do an ad program. So I'm showing you this because here's us with little, no money as a startup. We didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. That we did this program, and we've been able to pretty much dominate our competition in this entire area, from search, from social, from everything, just by using what we're going to call an influencer-based content program, which I think is so valuable, and you all need to be looking at it. And I'll talk about what exactly that is. So here's our homepage. How do we leverage influencers? So Jonathan Crossfield is an influencer of ours. He's actually in Asia Pacific. We just had our Content Marketing World Sydney event. Jonathan's an influencer there. I want Jonathan to be sharing content all over the place so that his network becomes our network. So you all have your network. You know your network. You probably love your network. But you want your network's network and their network. That's how we're going to grow. And the only way that you're going to do that is I want Jonathan as an influencer to share that content. So what will happen is Jonathan will submit that piece of content. He'll send it over, and then we have somebody, our process goes through, we have somebody that reviews that title. We have a person, I have one person that all they do is they look at titles for blog. That's how important titling is. And then I have somebody that edits it, and then we have a proofreader. Because what I want is I want Jonathan to see this published piece of content, and I want him to share it. If Jonathan doesn't share it with his network, then we failed, because we're trying to grow out our network. We used to have all kinds of different calls to action on our page. Everything, I was selling everything. I mean, I'm sure you guys have, I don't know, around your content or your blogs or whatever that you have, but you selling your products? You show what you have? Most companies that we talk to, they're selling everything around their content. What we realized is that what works the best is we want a content offer from our content. That will absolutely be the best from a conversion standpoint. And we removed everything else that we could. We still do have some advertising on here. But what I want them to do is I want them to sign up and become a subscriber. Because we're talking about owned media channels. That email subscription is crucial. It's so important. It's nothing wrong with Twitter, nothing wrong with Facebook or LinkedIn. Those are all important subscriptions. But you don't own those. LinkedIn owns those, and Twitter owns those, and Facebook owns those. And they could turn those off, and they might keep them going. That's great. I still want to focus on those. But the one that I can own is email. That's what I want. So I want to drive everything there. Does anyone use a pop-up on their site? Use pop-up? So as a user, I can't stand pop-ups. Anybody like pop-ups? Don't you hate it when you get hit with a pop-up? As a publisher, I love pop-ups. Can't get enough of pop-ups. We use WordPress as our CMS system, and this is Pipity. So I don't know if you use WordPress, but Pipity, no, I have no affiliation with them, but they're fantastic. This little form right here that we have gets over 50% of our daily signups. And we really are focusing on, because we're about 100, 150 subscriptions a day now, up to. And we're really because what we found is that all the magic happens from social sharing happens from email. Most people think email is dead. Email has never been more alive. It's just harder to get through, harder to cut through the clutter. But the ones that really love your email, they really engage it. We're seeing some really high open rates, some upwards of 40% in some cases on some of our daily emails. And as soon as that goes out, then we see the social sharing. Then it really, really takes off. A couple things that really want to make this work from an influencer program. The first thing is I want to give some content gifts to my influencers. Now when I say, does anybody have a formal social influencer program or where you actually are targeting influential people in the industry from your content? Does anybody do that? Okay, so here we go. This is so crucial if you want to make this work. The first thing is you have to create your influencer list. What is your influencer list? That is where are your customers hanging out when they're not on your site? Because they're not always going to be on your site, right? But where are they? Are they on one of the CFE sites? Are they on a blog down the street? Where are they? Because we want to know that. And then what you want to do is you want to create a list of those people because we want to get those people involved in our content. Because if they're going to share it to their network, their network is that's the network we want to reach. What we want to do then is we want to give those people lots of gifts and lots of love from content so that they start paying attention to us. All right? I'll give you an example. This is a content marketing playbook we did with Eloqua and PR Newswire. We had 50 case studies in this. 42 of them came from our influencers that we were targeting or our customer base. 26 of those shared this when we told them we didn't want anything. We just said, hey, just want to let you know we put your case study or we put your article in this playbook. Just want to let you know. We didn't say they had to share it. We just say they did. 26 of them did. And we had, in just a couple weeks, had over 50,000 downloads. Not because of our network, because of their network. And all we did was create a really good piece of curated content with all their information in it. We gave them. And what happened is when we ever have to go to those people, they'll do anything we want because we're sharing their content. They'll do anything we want them to do. So as you define your list of influencers, I'm going to go through this and then I've got to shut it down here. I want to get you this because I think it's really critical. So when you look at the content that you share on, let's just say Twitter, because Twitter is the easiest one to use for this example. Most of us have a content strategy that we're promoting a lot of our own content all the time. But if you really want to work this strategy to work for you and to build that influencer list so they start sharing your content in the long run, you have to share their content more than yours. So I call this social media 411 and start from this side. So of every 6 pieces of content that you share on Twitter, I want one of those can be your press release, your new product release, your piece of boring content that nobody's going to pay attention to. You can go ahead and put that out there. Nobody's going to share it, nobody's going to do anything with it, but if you're going to feel good about sharing that, go. You can go ahead and do that. Then that next one, that's going to be your piece of educational content on your site. And then 4, that's going to be educational pieces of content from your influencer base. And every one of those influencers are going to see you share that constantly. Because most of the time when influencer programs are started, we go and we reach out to somebody and say, hey, would you write for us? Or would you look at this product review, or would you do something for us? But what we want to do is we want to share their content for months and really get on their good side. And then when we want something, they'll be more than willing to help us out. Because we had 40 influencers on our list, and we're really good friends with all of them now, just because they love us, because we share all their content with our network. And they will do anything for you then. So social media 411. You mentioned SlideShare, Steve. I think it's really critical. How many of you use SlideShare? Raise your hand. Couple? Man, we've generated so much business from SlideShare, I can't even tell you. SlideShare is the YouTube for PowerPoints. You at least have PowerPoints that you could be starting to put on SlideShare, at least to start your content from that standpoint. It is one of our best lead generators. It was asked before about gating your content. We put this out completely free on SlideShare, this really good content. And when you get to about slide 9, this little form comes up, so that they can skip by it. They'll still get all the content, but we get about 60 to 70 people on SlideShare a day that will still fill out this form even though they don't have to and get that information. You have no idea all the kooky stuff that you guys sell. They're all looking for it on SlideShare. There's 75 million people a month going to SlideShare right now. Most of them are B2B. So I would just charge you with putting that out there. So when you look at any of these programs or look at especially the influencer stuff, you got to get uncomfortable with this. What you want to do is you want to get that content shared in as many places as possible, as long as you have the strategy to back it up. So a couple things that I'd love you to do is make sure that before you do create any more content, or you say, oh no, we got to hire a journalist, or we're going to, which you should get more content. You should go ahead and get more of that third-party content. You should do a lot of that stuff, but make sure you have the strategy first that's sound, that pushes that together first. All right. Did anybody get anything out of it? Did you get one thing? Yeah. All right, fantastic. Did I run over my question time?